the first thing to say is that it's a fairly complicated picture. There are several ways that you can access careers advice in the UK. So three main ones. You do have the National Careers Service, which provides information, advice and guidance to young people through phone and web, and then to adults, phone and web and face-to-face. So as you can see, there's a big hole there for young people in terms of face-to-face guidance. That is filled in two ways, I think. So firstly, through private organisations, so independent training providers and private careers organisations that give paid-for services into schools. And the second one is a recent development where the duty to deliver careers advice has been given to teachers. So in essence, that seems like a great move. The people who are giving providing the learning also give the careers advice. However, giving careers advice is a fairly technical thing. And so a lot of teachers have to do it as part of their normal jobs, and they don't necessarily have the time or the resources to do it. So there are three different ways, and I think the other thing for teachers is the fact that they have a very complicated picture of where to get their expertise from, which they don't always know. So that's kind of the picture at the moment. I think vocational skills is one of those things that falls in as part of that, and I think the key thing is to make sure that those teachers and careers advisors and parents have the right information they need to know what careers advice, so it knows what vocational skills are out there and what they're about. I think the thing we find is that a lot of teachers and parents come from a very particular academic route through their learning, and therefore don't have personal experience of vocational skills. And so I think part of the challenge for us as a country is to look at how do we upskill the people giving careers advice around what the benefits and routes are into vocational skills. WorldSkills UK is an organisation that exists to champion world-class apprenticeships and technical and professional skills. So the idea behind WorldSkills UK is that we exist to try and increase business competitiveness, to look at addressing young people employability, and to look at how the activities that we do help to increase and drive up standards. So we do that through three different routes. The first one is we run and manage the WorldSkills UK competition cycle. So that's looking at, I can't say the Olympics of skills, I just said it, but there we go. But looking at how do you run some regional, national, and then finally international competitions, looking at vocational skills at the heart of those. The second thing we do is we run skills shows. So these are experiential events, experiential careers and skills events. The idea being that we have competitions at the heart of it, but we invite over 75,000 young people a year to Birmingham to come and see the excellence of the competitions and then be inspired and informed about what skills it takes to get into those competitions and to get into those careers. So we rely very heavily on what we call an experiential careers model. So it's all very well and good telling people about what they can do and what they can achieve, but what we want to do is we want to show them through competitions, but also through giving them hands-on experiences of those skills in mechatronics, in CAD design, in video moving image, in hairdressing, in a whole range of different skills. And then the third thing, which we believe really strongly in, is looking at how do we create positive role models in those skills. So in the same way that after the Olympics and after the personalities that came out of the Olympics, participation in certain sports increased significantly, there's a real correlation between that and what we do with skills. So looking at taking these exceptional young people who go and represent their country at WorldSkills and taking them and creating a role model around them. So both in terms of just raising the profile of vocational and technical and professional skills, but also about how do we address issues in diversity. So looking at addressing the lack of women in STEM subjects, or looking at the lack of diversity in ethnic minorities in skills. And how do we take a role model and raise the profile of them, so in turn we raise the profile of that skill. And so those are the kind of three main elements that we have that we're working on at WorldSkills UK. And as I say, really are looking at how do we raise the profile of technical and professional skills in the UK. So as I've said before, it's a fairly complicated picture, and we are as a country looking at how we address that. So looking at trying to put the information that's required in the hands of the teachers. So we have looked at how to use the National Careers Service to create a brokerage service, so that teachers can know where good advice careers comes from, where they can get resources and advice to deliver that. The second thing that I think is a real strength for us as a country is a few years ago we produced a inspiration vision statement which talked very much about the fact that while information is really important to careers advice, almost equally important is inspiration and aspiration. So in this day and age, young people can find out almost anything online and they can get that information, but providing context, providing real world role models, and providing real access to employers and the skills is just as important as telling them how to get into that skill. And so since then, there's been lots of work in terms of how do you implement this vision statement of inspiring and creating aspiration for these young people. How do we develop this experiential careers model? So it doesn't just exist a few times a year at skills shows throughout the country, but actually how do you embed that as part of teaching and learning in schools, not skills. And another element of that is around competitions as well. So there's something around delivering competitions that creates skills in young people that are so important to employers. So not just the technical and professional ones, but also looking at the interpersonal skills, so dealing with pressure, delivering to time, problem solving, flexibility, which you can really deliver as part of a competition activity in schools. And so while it's not directly careers advice, preparing young people for being employed is almost as important as giving them the right direction to travel in. So as World Skills UK, we've been working with the British Council for a year or so around how do we take the model that we've developed in the UK around experiential careers advice, and how do we share that more broadly with member countries of the British Council. And a particular example of that is we've worked quite closely with the British Council in India, so working with India and the NSDC out there to look at how do we share best practice, both in terms of competitions, but also the wraparound activity that sits around competitions. So making the most of that excellence to deliver good quality, expert, experiential careers advice. And so in November last year, a delegation came over from India, came to the skills show, spoke to our partners and organisers about how they could take the model that we've developed in the UK back to India. And then in January this year, I went over to Kerala in India, where they had their first skills fiesta. So looking at building a similar model to what we do, so having competitions at the heart of it, but ensuring that there is interactive, have-a-go activity that sits around those competitions to try and show and inform young people about what careers they can go into. Now, very much on a practical level to show them what the next steps are, but also to demonstrate that actually people's ideas of engineering could be about someone covered in grease and dirt, when actually they're highly skilled, highly professional careers which are really fulfilling, really well paid, really well supported, and so it's showing in a real sense what those careers are. And so that partnership with India is something that's ongoing and being developed at the moment. And so we've just produced a report on how that future working will happen in terms of sharing best practice both ways and furthering developing and tailoring our approach in the UK to obviously a very different cultural model in India. I think it's absolutely essential to embed careers advice as part of education. So as part of World Skills UK, we obviously put on large-scale, very inspirational events. But that needs to sit as part of a broader programme of careers advice in schools. If you go to the skills show or a skills show, it's brilliant and it's really inspirational, but then you need to figure out what the tangible next steps are as part of that. As part of the skills show offer, we work really closely with the Careers Development Institute, which is the professional body for careers advice in the UK. And we've developed an offer which we've called the Staff Room at the show. And that's about CPD, continual professional development for teachers, and about ensuring that they have the skills they need to deliver the careers advice back into their classrooms. We did some surveys at the show last year, and 98% of teachers said they were going to do something differently as a result of attending the show. So whether that's using the resources we've given them, or whether that's just seeing that actually an experiential model is a really useful way of engaging young people in thinking about their futures. So I think embedding it is really important. And on the flip side to that, I think it's really important that young people are exposed to a broader range of routes they can take. Not everyone is suited to the vocational route in the same way that not everyone is suited to the academic route. And what is important is whatever background the teacher comes from, or the person giving the advice comes from, that they can provide that broad range of options. So while it's really important to embed it, it's also as important to make sure that that is as impartial as it possibly can be.